not the wind?
It's the wind.
It is. Expect trees to come in.
Really? Yeah, I'm gonna take my call.
The pretty area for a Sunday.
Sunset.
Yeah, that's a lot.
They expect trees to come down from the wind. And there's gonna be more rain this week. More rain and more snow. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought. I think, Mr. Steiner, I think we're not good yet. We're good? No?
Verify with somebody on the phone.
Okay. Yes, we live. That's fine. Mr. Steiner, we're good.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I want to call to order the Thursday, February 13, 2025 meeting of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority Finance Committee. Thanks to everyone who's participating tonight, and thanks to those who may be watching or listening into our meeting. The first thing is a roll call to make sure that we do have a quorum present, and I'm attending virtually due to medical reasons.
Well, I'll call the roll for Chair Randall,
Present.
Chair Jefferson, who is remote,
Present.
and we have Mayor Reed
Present.
and Mayor Davis Younger.
Present.
Great, so we do have a quorum, right? Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you all again very much for taking the time out from your very busy schedules. So the first agenda item is approval of the December 12, 2024 draft meeting summary minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review them, and does anyone have any questions?
I have, and I do not.
Okay, great. Well, then I'd entertain a motion to approve the draft meeting summary minutes.
I'll move, Chair Randall.
Is there a second?
Chair Jefferson.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions?
One abstention, two abstentions.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Now, we have a number of discussion and information items, and Michael Longy will take us through most of them. But what I've asked is a presentation on each item, and then any questions or comments that any member of the committee has would be welcome. So, Michael, you want to start?
Thank you, Chairman. We're starting with the local distribution fund budget. This is the 30% budget. And I would ask to make things easier to just go to the attachment, which is on the reverse page of the staff report. This is the easiest budget we'll be going over tonight. It starts with carry forward, as all budgets do. There is none because we distribute all of the 30% each year. In an ideal situation, we manage to do this for every year that we've been operating. The next categories are revenue. Now, these numbers are 30% of the expected total revenue. And we have the four main authority revenues: sales tax, the transfer, grantor's tax, and then the IOEP program funds. You'll see two lines there: COVA interest. That is interest that's earned on the money while it is transitioning through the state's system. They give us the interest on that. And the interest earnings is interest earnings while the money is sitting in the authority's hands, which is a very short amount of time. We typically have it out within a week of receiving it. All of that equals 140 or 141 million. Our plan is to distribute that whole 140 million to the localities in accordance with the state code. We're looking at basically a $12 million increase from last year. And with that, I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Yes, I know.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Okay, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Chair Randall, I have a question. The adopted for the grantor's tax and the proposed, it's a pretty big difference. Can you talk to me about that a little bit?
It's prior year and current year. The big difference with grantors going down is
It's not the selling houses.
just what we've been seeing. Yes.
Houses just are not going on the market, not selling. So they have that's a huge drop. No.
Yeah, it's actually the value of the properties are going up or staying the same depending upon.
But they're
the
not selling.
classification, But they're not selling. There's no transaction volume.
Yeah, I think I heard someplace that the normal inventory of homes should be 5 to 7 months. The inventory of homes in Northern Virginia is 45 days. So no one's selling their house.
And we'll go into grantors a little bit more when we go into the monthly revenue report.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other questions on that item? Let's see. Sales tax, you're expecting an increase in sales taxes. There's a lot going on in the region due to federal activity. Do you still feel confident about the increase in sales taxes?
I do, because sales tax is one of the most resilient revenues. You essentially have to enter a pretty deep recession for sales tax to go down. Inflation, this sounds terrible from a personal perspective, but inflation actually increases sales tax. The prices go up, the sales tax revenue goes up. Has obviously a negative impact on people's home budgets, but that inflation balance is, unless inflation gets so bad that people stop spending, and they will tend to reduce their spending, but sales tax won't go negative typically. I think in our 25-year history of sales tax, it was only things like 9/11 and then federal sequestration that actually had sales tax going negative year to year.
For Mr. Lungi and Mr. Snyder, you should know, I'm not shopping, so that number could well go down quite a bit.
Well, and when we presented the revenue estimates for the authority adoption, we didn't know what year, but in the 6-year revenue life, we did build in a recession. It's not 26, I think it was 27, so we may be a little early on the recession that we built in over the 6-year life. And of course, as we prepare for the next 2-year update to the 6-year program, we will look at the revenue estimates again. We look at them on a 2-year basis, because unlike your jurisdictions, your revenue estimates drive your budgeting. Here, the operating budget is such a small percentage of the revenue that we handle. It's just more efficient to do it every 2 years.
Okay, any other questions on that item? Thanks, Michael. The next one.
The next one is the regional revenue fund budget. This is the 70%. And again, I would suggest that you go to the spreadsheet. The budget starts off with the 4 revenues that we had just talked about. We have that COVA interest. And then down at the bottom of the revenue line, investment portfolio earnings. I will go into this in more depth in the portfolio presentation and the revenue presentation, but you'll notice we're taking the portfolio earnings from an estimate of 35 million last year, and we're doubling it to 70 million for FY26. The portfolio is now the authority's second largest source of revenue. The only thing that beats it is sales tax. That gives us a total revenue line of 398 million, which is an 18%, 18.6% increase, or $63 million increase. That $63 million essentially comes from both sales tax and the portfolio earnings. Moving through the expenditure lines, the first 2 expenditures are the principal and interest payments on the bonds that we have outstanding. We have approximately $50 million of bonds still out there from our inaugural bond issuance in 2014. Then the next line, the 397,000, is a change that we are proposing in the structure of the budget. We are proposing to take the expenses for the Project Information Monitoring and Management System, belovedly known as PIMS, in the NOVA dashboard, and move those expenditures to the Regional Revenue Fund budget. The reason we're proposing that is this budget already pays for transaction, a lot of our modeling expenses and stuff like that. And we had taken the position in years past that those expenses, which really are regional functions and regional necessities, are better reflected in the regional revenue fund budget. For that, we have a upgrade that we are proposing to PIMS that will allow it to include CMAQ and RSTP applications. Basically, it will automate the application process, much like what was originally designed for with PIMS, which was the automation of regional revenue fund projects applications, the 2-year updates. What this does is it saves a considerable amount of time for the localities. It eliminates a lot of errors because we put in checks and balances in the application process. And that will also allow us to reflect the CMAQ and RSTP projects on the NOVA dashboard. Remember, the authority makes recommendations to the CTB on these projects. So they go through your hands, if you will, but ultimately the final decider on it is the CTB. And the funds do not hit the authority's books. So this will be a way for us to more easily track the benefit to the region of those two funding sources, CMAQ and RSTP, and also allow for transparency to the public about what's happening with the projects and have the same kind of project information that we have for regional revenue fund projects. Okay. The next line is 4.5 million, and that is the next transaction update and updates to the 6-year programs. So we are in a position this year where the next 2-year update to the 6-year program, which is where jurisdictions apply for projects and we go through the screening process, that will be conducted under the existing transaction, while at the same time we are preparing for the next transaction. And this happens because we do 2-year updates to the 6-year program, but we essentially do a new transaction every 5 years. So you have that overlap. The next line down, which is the really exciting one, we have it's 173 million. We have 8 projects that have been approved for funding by the authority that have come in and said, this is the year we want an appropriation. Those are on page 2 of the staff report. Loudon, 2.5 million for ITS improvements. City of Alexandria has 2 projects, each at 5 million. City of Manassas, Liberia Avenue, 3rd lane eastbound, for 8.8 million. And then the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, 22.9 million. That was a project that was originally applied for by DRPT and was transferred to the VPRA as they spun up and became an active entity. Fairfax County, $10 million for 8 new battery electric buses. We also have 2 forward appropriations. This is where project sponsor says, I can get going and start spending money now. And instead of issuing debt for that, we actually use a portion of that portfolio. So that money won't be in the portfolio, but it's better off in the community. It's being turned in. Prince William County came in with a request for 115 million, and the City of Manassas came in with a request for a little over $4 million. We've run the analytics on this. We go through a very stringent process to make sure that the authority, you are not overcommitting future revenues. And that process is reviewed by the auditors. I think the staff is recommending those 2 forward appropriations. The other 6 appropriations are essentially by right appropriations.
So that forward appropriations have not been, those have not been voted on yet.
Well, you've approved the project,
okay,
but it was in the case of Prince William, it was funding for 28, 29, so they're moving that up depending upon.
I think she's saying has the authority for appropriation.
Oh, no,
That's
no.
exactly what I'm saying. Okay. All right. I didn't think so.
So that brings us to total expenditures of 183 million. The next line, the 214 million, is revenue restricted for future funding programs. This is basically a way for us to keep the budget straight by putting in the cash that we still need to account for. So, I mean, that is committed money. It's committed to projects, but the projects haven't submitted a request for or appropriation yet. The 5.6 line is the transfer to the operating fund budget. So that number will change depending upon what the authority approves as far as the operating budget. But this is where instead of jurisdictions having to pay for the operating budget based on their population, it all just comes out of the regional revenue fund. The next line is restricted fund balance carry forward. This is part of that calculation we do with the auditors. It's another way of basically what we're telling you with that 55 million is you have 55 million that isn't pegged to anything at this point. That will go into the next PAYGO calculation, for the 2-year updates in the 6-year program.
Would it be appropriate to call that like a fund balance?
It would, but it messes up the way we're supposed to present this.
Okay.
But that'd be a very fair way of
Okay.
looking at it.
Got it.
And you notice the 55 million came down a little bit from last year. A big part of that is the fact that Prince William came in with that large forward appropriation because that number will change as we close out the fiscal year and we have revenue that's in excess of our original estimate, which is our target of ours is to always end up with a little excess revenue. We've actually tried to close that gap in the last couple of years, but
Yeah.
And then this is where projects that close out, leaving money on the table, it goes into that once that closeout is done, or a withdrawal.
Mhm.
This is the line that hits that, or that will hit. The next categories are our reserve balances. We have 120 million working capital reserve. This is largely driven to protect bondholders. It also, and it's a big part of our credit rating, but it also, if one remembers in 2014, the General Assembly passed the budget at a very late state in the fiscal year.
Actually, yeah, very late.
And so this is a way to protect the authority
Okay.
and
Okay.
not the operating budget, because obviously it's not that much money,
Okay.
but that we can keep project reimbursements going if the state were to be late in passing the budget.
Okay.
The 5.5 million is a debt service reserve. It's required by our bond covenants. And so we have the reserve balances of 125. I know that the Regional Revenue Fund budget, the complication is those forward appropriations and the fact that we do multi-year funding and have things spread out. But with that, if there's any questions, I'll be pleased to address.
Thank
Only
you.
to
Are there some questions?
neighbors younger. So are you guys gonna make from 28 to Liberia Avenue 3 lanes to turn? Alrighty.
You're gonna have to do something.
Amen.
Because.
That's good.
Yes,
That's,
yes.
yeah,
And
because
then
you, yeah.
Roundabout.
Yeah. Oh, it's gonna be a roundabout.
The 2 projects, so
Oh.
they're loving their mayor. It's so
Any other questions? The only question I have, Michael, is you provided a number of outlined a number of projects that have been approved for funding. Have all those projects gone through the criteria and the rating process, and were just like advanced funding over what they would otherwise get, but they've all been rated and approved by the authority?
Yes,
Sure, to
they're
the
in.
many statutes we have to comply with. I just wanted that clarified.
Yeah, this is just the stage where you're actually applying money to it. The authority has reviewed and adopted these projects. We call them adopted projects. And we're just at the point where the project sponsor is saying, I can start spending money in this fiscal year.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions on this one? Thanks, Michael. Next one.
Next one is the operating budget, and I do want to be respectful of time. The operating budget is the budget that typically gets the most discussion. Again, I would suggest that you pull out the large spreadsheet. And we have indexed the staff report in the notes column to that spreadsheet. We present the operating budget in basically two phases. One is base budget escalations. Those are the contract required increases or inflationary increases. The big driver here is typically salary increases because salaries are such a huge component of the overall budget. The salary increases that we're projecting are 6%. We have not been able to gather much information because the city managers and the county executives have not released it. I think Loudon may have in the last day or so, but not before we dispatch this. You know, their projected budgets for the jurisdiction. So as we move through, we're proposing 6%. And as we move through and watch what the jurisdictions do, we try to stay in alignment with jurisdictions. They may change that number. But currently that would be the not to exceed number, okay, on a budget basis. Benefits, I'll just note, we have a decrease in health and dental benefits. That's more based on the fact that as we hire new people, we have to assume that they are coming in with a partner and a passel of kids. Because we have to budget for that. And as they come in and they're singles and no kids, that budget, that line goes down. The increase in disability insurance is because we are hitting those age milestones as staff members. Some of us harder than others. On the professional services side, we have basically some contract increases. The one large decrease there, 26,000, is mostly driven by the once every 2 year economic study we do, and a one-time reduction in the cost of preparing the annual report. Actually, Abigail has done a tremendous job over the years in reducing that cost pretty much every year. For technology and communications, those are contract related increases. The first decrease, the 1,600, is because we're not paying for phone services in our old location anymore. If you'll notice, no authority employee has a desk phone. We all operate just off of cell phones. Part is money saving, but part of it is just convenience. And then the $10,000 for the hardware software is the one-time expenses for this fiscal year's new employees. Moving to administrative expenses, the advertisement decrease is because we put in money for advertising for vacancies when we ask for new positions. We have some contract increases. The office lease, you'll notice, is 13,000. That's the regular escalation. We still have a reserve that we think will come in at about 800,000 on the lease. And then office furniture and fixtures, 17,000 decreases one-time expenses. The good news is, remember, we got that big donation from the former tenant of this floor, so we don't have to buy desks when we have new employees. We don't have to buy any furniture. So that brings us, that is the base budget escalations. I'll stop here before we go to the new initiatives and see if there are any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question.
Yes, please go forward.
And it's to Ms. Backman. So we just had a discussion about the fact that MBTA didn't have the bandwidth in your staff to do what was being asked by the General Assembly. Now, that's a huge ask in a very short period of time. But more and more, I do think that some of those types of requests are going to start coming from the General Assembly, knowing that and having no issues with anything that was being reported here. Do you believe that you have the staff that you need right now? Do you believe you have the staff that you need?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think that's a perfect segue for part two of the budget, the operating budget proposal. You will see the request for some additional positions.
Okay.
The authority for years have run lean and mean, and I know the direction initially was keep it small, and I believe small is relative. We do funding programs every 2 years. It's like clockwork. And now we have a funding program that we're going to come to you and ask you to adopt the schedule, but we plan to do a call for projects this spring. And you will hear tonight in half an hour or so, the presentation from OIP, Office of Intermodal Planning. Thank you, and investments about smart scale and how the region isn't doing well in smart scale. So you will see what we anticipate seeing additional projects, and every funding program we've done has always been oversubscribed. Always. And with each funding program, we are tasked, when you adopt the funding programs, we are tasked with monitoring, following, really taking accountability for these projects. So at next month's meeting, you'll see a project status update, but this is a long way of saying as our project count grows, our staffing to keep up with the project count isn't grown to the point that it requires us to play a shell game to try to manage resources so that we can make sure we're doing the project delivery aspect of the job, the planning and the programming and making sure the projects are delivered. But then there are other initiatives that we have as well and other things under the law. So no is the answer.
Would that run, if I may, Mr. Chairman, would that run on the fiscal year? So would you be looking to doing something by January or July? Be able to post something by July 1st, not hire, but post by July 1st?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we do have mid-year, but
Except for we have, well, let me just go through the new initiatives, because the new
okay.
initiatives actually
Answer my
answer your
question.
question.
Okay.
The new initiatives this year are 3 positions. The authority, the operations is basically broken into 3 segments: finance administration, planning and programming, and then communication. And we are requesting positions for all 3 of those areas. I kind of blended page 2 of the staff report. Go.
I think she's looking in the chart in this table.
Yeah,
They're not there. Just go to page for a second. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I'm good.
I've got a lot of narrative to talk about. So we did a kind of a high level brief on the 3 position requests, and then there's details in attachment B, C, and D in the packet that go into a lot more detail on those 3 individual positions. But to kind of approach it from the high level, the financial accountant and regional transportation planner, as you have instructed us, we've been focusing in on project delivery, and we are starting to internally see the benefits of that effort. We recently went through a process, and I'm purposely going to try to not use any names. But we went through a process with a project sponsor, and we cleared up some miscommunication on a $25,000 issue. Well, that clarity will actually allow $5 million to be released back into the regional revenue. That level of communication and interaction with the project sponsors is so critical. I mean, what looked like a $25,000 issue that got there too long. Actually was a holdup for a project sponsor saying, I'm done with this phase of the project and I can release this unspent $5 million back in. And obviously that'll go into the next payment calculation. So that was a very close coordination between the finance side and the planning side. You've seen the stuff last time on the finance position, so I'm not going to belabor that one too much. I do want to note that one of the things that we need to do is implement a process to track the useful economic life of these projects. All of those billions that have been put into the region, we also have a legal responsibility to make sure that what the authority paid for is being used throughout its economic life. And in the case of right-of-way, bridges, roads, it's essentially forever. In the case of a bus, that can be 10 to 20 years. And we need to put that in. I want to delve.
And that's like Mr. Longy was saying, that was a legal requirement, because if you fund, and buses, that they're easier because the lifespan of the bus 15 to 20 years. If we fund a bus and the locality decides 3 years later that they want to sell it, then we have to be in on the negotiations to get a depreciated value for our money. They couldn't legally keep all of the proceeds, given that we're the funding entity.
Okay. Interesting.
So we did on the 3 attachments, we did put a little table there that shows the salary and benefits, the recurring costs, and then the one-time cost, which is basically a laptop and cell phone, and then the total cost for the position. I do want to delve into the regional transportation planner position a little bit more. As Ms. Backman was saying, we've got some stats here. We currently have 185 SPAs representing 139 projects that are managed across 12 jurisdictions, and that is an 18% increase. We have 6 projects received funding but have not yet been able to execute an SPA. That again goes to project delivery.
I'm just gonna move myself to this window. I'm not feeling so comfortable sitting over here on this side, because
It's not the
listen,
shade.
I don't know what
The
that
window
is.
blows.
I never,
Shade
never,
won't stop.
I just, you know, and all these horror shows, diverse, and I'm not. Not doing this right now. I've learned that watching enough of these shows, I know better. Move right on over here.
I want to point out those 6 projects. Project delivery is showing benefits in this area. We have, in a very short amount of time, been receiving a lot of project closeouts. The project closes out, anything left on the project funding goes back in the pay go. So in addition to that 5 million, we have several more million coming, but it takes a lot of interaction to get those that work done. And it is a big draw on planning. Project delivery also, because the project sponsors are seeing it as a priority, and I would say feeling it in a very positive way. Again, without using any names, we've had a project sponsor come up to us and go, I'm looking at this project. It was supposed to be done in 2030. We don't think we can start it till 2030. Mm-hmm. What should we do? And staff recommendation is withdraw. Mm-hmm. You are 100% reliant on MBTA funding for this. Your estimate is not going to be able to essentially last for 8 years. Mm-hmm. So, we'll see what happens with that. But those are the type of conversations that are very detailed. They are time consuming, but very beneficial. And this position would make substantial increases for that. We also are looking at additional efforts with the bus PEP BRT is reaching a stage where it's wrapping up, but it's not at a stage yet where we can project what phase 2 will be and present the authority an option for phase 2. So we, just kind of as a warning, we are looking to come somewhere in around mid-year for next fiscal year and potentially ask for another phase of the PDP and BRT. And that will probably also require another staff position to support that. But unfortunately, we can see the light at the tunnel, but we don't have enough details on it to really make a case for it. So the little box on the salary, benefits, and fixed costs for that position. We did talk about the communications position previously as well. Again, I put in some additional figures. When we met last, we were looking at basically insourcing savings of $104,000. The critical thing with this position is a person, you can typically expect an employee to work 1,920 hours a year. We are taking 660 hours out of oversight roles from mostly our transaction contract and planning to, by not using that will free up that $104,000. If we hire this position, we actually get over 12,000 hours of additional work out of the person by not paying the contractor overhead fees. And as I mentioned previously, Abigail and the communications team has just done an outstanding job of insourcing already. So, but as they insource, that sucks up their bandwidth. So some of the things that they've done is the board photos that Sharara, I think, takes now. To have a professional photographer do those in the past was $2,300, over $2,300. The annual report design, which was totally moved in-house, was $9,400. Editing on the annual report is $2,300. All of that's being done in-house now. But so this would, new position would basically return the resource for them to continue to do the good quality stuff. I do want to note there's a line in here. We are requesting that if the authority authorizes position, we would also like to be able to onboard it early. The reason for that is we will be starting to do the scope of work for the transaction contract. If we are going to move these communications things in-house, I'd like to have that communications person on board early so that they are done with their learning curve before they have to start drafting that scope of work. And we have the resources in unspent operating budget to be able to afford that. That is my presentation on the operating budget.
Not really as early.
Questions?
If the budget's adopted in March or April, then it would be March or April. I do not, if we have a position open, I don't believe in moss growing under our feet.
Okay, I understand.
And I can tell you the competition has been,
Oh, really?
well, yeah, it's high in this area.
I would like to wrap up. We're on schedule for presenting the budgets. In February, the finance committee can send me back and have me do more work on the proposal, or authorize that the budgets as developed to go forward to the authority in March.
And you mean in February, you mean tonight?
Tonight.
Yes.
We didn't make it an action item because we didn't want to put pressure on you, but.
Okay. So there are these, they're looking to bring outside in, like you look internally to promote from within, obviously.
Yeah.
And so, but they're posted outside, and that's what you're saying is difficult to get. It's always good to use internal because they already know. And so then that creates an opening.
Yeah.
At least you would have that knowledge already there. And the best people, promote it. And I'm gonna do it.
Okay, any other questions? I do have just a couple comments. First of all, as is obvious from the other questions tonight, the justification for those three new positions really need to be sharp and really need to be tied directly to the mission of, well, I'm sure they would be, but I mean tied directly to tangible benefits for the public. So the more that you're able to describe that, the more they'll have credibility with the members and with the public. So those justifications really ought to be very sharp. I understand as well that that the budget, if we approve going forward tonight, that we're also, though, basically there's a placeholder for the average compensation. I think you mentioned that earlier. It's not to exceed, it could be lower. So those are the only comments I have. Do members have any other comments recognizing that this is a quasi-formal action? Okay, do you need a vote on this, a formal vote, Michael? I assume you do.
Yes, just a directive would be good.
Okay, will someone move?
Mr. Snyder, I'm happy to make that motion, and then I have some questions inside the motion.
And then what? I'm sorry.
And then I have some questions inside the motion. Well,
Okay.
I have some discussion on I have a discussion on the motion with staff.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone want to second the motion?
I don't think they heard your motion.
I believe the motion is to move the budgets forward to the.
Yeah, I'm making the motion. I'm happy to move the motion to move the budgets forward. I'm making that motion.
Is there a
That
second?
motion has been made.
Chandra Jefferson will say.
Thank you, Chair Jefferson. There's been a motion made and seconded. All those in favor, and well, first of all, any further discussion? And Chair Randall, I think you did want to have some additional discussion.
I had a question. Mr. Longy, maybe I misunderstood you. Did you say you didn't need any positions to go to a vote tonight?
No, you can wait till March.
Are you sure?
Well, the full authority. I could take them up to.
I'm only asking because it sounds like this is at least one of these positions is pretty important to get on ASAP. That's all the only reason I'm asking. It doesn't have to be all of them, but that one, if it's going to be a mid-cycle position anyway, then whether we do it now or in March, I would do all the other ones, but the mid-cycle position, why not do it tonight?
I think, excuse me, if I could, Madam Chair, if the committee is comfortable with moving as presented the proposed operating budget, we will take that and then it can go to the authority in March.
Okay, that's fine.
I think we're trying to address, as Councilmember Snyder said, making sure we've sharpened up the public benefit.
That's fine. Sounds good.
But we will make
Thank you.
sure it is sharp.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Mrs. Snyder.
Thank you. So the motion has been made and seconded to present to the authority in March. Is that right? Now, a lot of our local government budgets will still be very much in the early to mid stages. So my question to CEO Backman is, does this have to be in March or could it be in April?
It could be in April. It could definitely be in April, but we were just noting that if this committee feels comfortable in making the recommendation to the authority, it could be in March and it can also be in April. I understand if I understand correctly what you're saying with the localities having not adopted their budget, we really don't know where you all will be on pay increases for us to have consistency with that, but it could definitely go forward in April.
Well, I would note for April, typically those budgets are not finalized till the end of the month. And, our financial policy does force us to put the budget in front of you in April, which is the second Thursday. So waiting to April probably isn't going to give us that much more information than we would have in March.
I think what we would see is proposed, but Mr. Longy is absolutely right. We won't know what you will have adopted.
And we do not, I mean, we set a do not exceed level for this reason. I mean, our guesswork, if you will, is that most jurisdictions are going to end up around that 6% point. If they go a lot higher than that, we find ourselves, if that happens in a couple of cycles, we find ourselves at where our pay scale is getting a little out of alignment. And we do what we did this year for this year's budget. We presented to the authority that fact and kind of did a catch-up phase in this year's budget. But I think the 6%, given what's been going on in DC with the federal government, I think 6% is a good not to exceed number.
Yeah, I guess my thought goes even deeper than that particular number. It goes to, there's a lot in this budget. This is a, to say the least, an unprecedented time for our citizens and, you know, and local government. So I want to give people enough time that they're comfortable with it. So I have a slight preference for April, but it's whatever the group wants. It's not, you know. What's that? I'm sorry.
I said, I'm fine with March.
Okay. All right. So the motion has been made and seconded to present the budget to the authority for consideration, likely in March. Could be April, but likely in March, and we give approval for it to be forwarded to the authority either way. So that's my understanding of the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And no. Abstention. Okay, that item passes unanimously. Next, I know we're running out of time, Michael, so if you could move forward, you know, as you would, as you possibly can. Thanks.
For the next three discussion items, I'll just say on the portfolio, we have some really good news to tell you. We'll get a little bit of it tonight, but I want to save the rest of it for when Deb Sim can present it because it's really her work. We've gone to the moved to the revenue attachments on the screen, and I want to bring your attention to the sales tax. This shows you our history. We've changed these charts a little bit, I think, to be more informative. You can see that blue line is our current sales tax. We're hoping to get that bump that we've seen in previous years. So I think the sales tax number is doing very well. These dates on these charts are when we receive the money. Sales tax runs 2 months behind. So February's number is actually December's. Scrolling down a little bit, this is a brand new chart. And this again goes into the good news that Dev will have next month. But we've added this one and it shows you three things. It shows you how much the portfolio has earned each month. As your CFO, my fiduciary duty to you, when you get something like the portfolio is now your second largest source of revenue, I feel compelled to give you a little bit more information. So you see the bar there is the actual interest earnings. But as we've talked about before, you have unrealized gains and losses. That blue and orange stacks, basically, if they're even, there's essentially no unrealized gain or loss. If you look at September, you see the blue bar is noticeably higher than the orange one. That is an unrealized gain. As I've said before, you can't spend an unrealized gain. It's not cash, it's a measurement. But this allows you to kind of get a sense of where that's going. You likewise don't need to worry about an unrealized loss. We didn't actually incur the loss. By the time that our audit comes up with an unrealized loss, we would have had to have sold the entire portfolio on June 30th in order to have actually incurred that loss. The lower chart there addresses grantors. I actually in November was getting close to telling you that grantors had turned around. I'm glad I didn't make that statement. We are though looking at macro and micro economic information, and we may hopefully be out of bumping along the bottom stage and starting to, well, I was going to say starting to see some life in grantors, but it kind of goes back to the real estate crisis, real estate recession of several years ago. Remember grantors, when people were going bankrupt and losing their property, grantors did very well.
Right.
Property values went down, but for each bankrupt property, you had two transactions, foreclosure sale and then the sale to the next owner, which made the revenue line work on really nice. So anyway, that's just a quick read on the operating budget. We are 40% of the way through the budget. We're 50% through the year as of the report that's in the packet, and we have no negative operating numbers. And that ends my presentation.
Good, great. Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Longy?
Not a question, but I think it's an observation because we live in Northern Virginia with so many federal jobs. Because we know the number of federal employees in this area. Fairfax has 50,000 by themselves, Loudoun has 18,000. You know, if federal employees are losing jobs, they're going to be, renters tax will go up for the worst possible reasons. Because we will see more homes going on the market because people are going to be foreclosing or selling because they can't, because they will not have jobs to keep their homes. So, yeah.
And when this happened last time, there was a lot of foreclosures. It's important to remember that the commercial sector was very healthy then.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks. Next item, Mr. Longy.
That concludes everything I had on the agenda.
Okay, Ms. Backman, anything else for the committee?
No, Mr. Chair.
So just going through the agenda, is there any other agenda item that we need to discuss tonight?
No, sir.
Not seeing any. Okay, anybody else, any member wish to raise any other issue? Okay,
Feel better.
thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion. We adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thanks a lot, everybody. A lot of work tonight, and thanks to staff for great work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bo.
Up there, right?
No, we've been a month behind.